murder of Matthew Shepard and its aftermath has passed into memory. Many now living in Laramie or studying at UW were not here then. For those who were here, many of the details, events, and emotions of that time have become deep memory, surfacing occasionally, sometimes only through cloudy recollection. They have become more mythos than remembrance. This special Saturday University, the first in Laramie, will take us back to 1998 and help us learn about or recall what actually happened to Matthew, how the people of UW and Laramie responded, and how the nation reacted. The morning's 3 sessions will explore key aspects of that event. In the first, Sheriff Dave O'Malley, who took part in the criminal investigation, will speak about the details of the crime and its legal repercussions. In the second, a panel of people who helped lead the community responses here in Laramie to the tragedy will describe how the community, UW and Laramie, reacted to Matthew's death and handled its aftermath. In the third presentation, the composer of the oratorio Considering Matt Shepard and musicians from the choir Conspirare, who will perform it this evening, will discuss how the events surrounding Matthew's death have become a performance of understanding and healing, a symbol of hope for those beyond Laramie's city limits. Before introducing our first speaker this morning, I want to thank a few people. First, UW's Matthew Shepard Memorial Committee, the Office of Diversity and Director Emily Manago, the Conspirare Company of Voices, who will perform this evening, the UW Office of Engagement and Outreach, and the Wyoming Humanities Council. A brief word about the morning's schedule. Each of our sessions will be about an hour, and that includes talk, conversation, comments, etc. We'll then have a 15-minute break following each one and return for the next one. So our first speaker this morning, Sheriff Dave O'Malley, was born and raised in Wyoming. Shortly after graduating from the University of Wyoming with a Bachelor of Science in Social Work, he was hired by the Laramie Police Department. Over the next 30 years, Dave served many roles, beginning as patrol officer and then rising through the ranks to detective sergeant, commander, and ultimately becoming Laramie's chief of police. During his years as a police commander, O'Malley was one of the investigators on the 1998 murder of Matthew Shepard, helping to gather the evidence that led to the conviction of his murderers. Following the investigation, a journey of personal awakening occurred in Dave's life and proudly continues today. Starting in 1999, Dave worked diligently with Judy Shepard and the Human Rights Campaign through the evolution of the Matthew Shepard Act, James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act. Dave was president at the White House when President Obama signed the bill into law. Dave has received numerous honors, though these include the Human Rights Campaign's Equality Award, the Ahmed Dabaran Award from the Fulton County District Attorney's Office in Atlanta, Georgia, the Irish America Magazine's Top 100 Award, and the Red Ribbon Angel Award from Wyoming AIDS Walk Committee. After retiring from the Laramie Police Department, Dave completed a 4-year term on the Laramie City Council. Deciding he had still not had enough, Dave ran for the position of Albany County Sheriff in 2010, took office in 2011, and was reelected in 2014. And without further ado, let me introduce Sheriff Dave O'Malley.
Can you all hear me with this microphone? Is that okay in the back? Okay. Good morning. This is the earliest I've been up on a Saturday since I quit hunting. That was, it was about 12 years ago. And for you that are not from Laramie, you're here visiting, welcome to a community that you can use a lawnmower and a snowblower in the same day. And it could happen. What I'd like to do today is kind of give you all some background information and knowledge that surrounds the investigation of Matt Shepard's murder. I'm not here to try to change opinions or to change decisions people have made, but I'm here to give you some information that might help you to think through some of the other dialogue that's going on out there today. Before I do that, I think I need to give you a little bit of background on myself. I'll only take a minute to do that. I never had any desire to be in law enforcement whatsoever. It's 40 years now. My dad called me a half-time student when I was in high school. He said, David, you spend half your time getting kicked out, the other half trying to get back in. I had an American problems teacher when I was a junior that thought I was one. I had an advisor when I was a senior that wrote in my East High Thunderbird, some bring happiness wherever they go, others whenever they go. Good luck, you'll need it. And it's absolutely true. I showed it to Jennifer. She said, that can't be, and here it is. And then I went to meet my counselor right before I graduated, and he said, O'Malley, don't bother going to college because you'll be wasting your time and your money. So little did I know that this guy was a psychologist, and he knew with my attitude, if he told me to do something, I'd do just the opposite. So Mr. Perella, the orchestra teacher, called me and he says, I'd like to have you come in on a Saturday and get your string bass, and we're going to record you on that. I'm going to send that recording to Casper College and see if we can get you a scholarship. So I majored in music for my first 2 years. And then I transferred to the University of Wyoming, and I realized that I didn't want to stay in music because I didn't want to be a teacher. And the Beatles already had a bass player, even though he was marginal. And so I wasn't sure what I was going to do, and I was in the union, and back in those days, nothing was computerized. It was 3x5 cards. There's 8,000 people in a room pushing and shoving to try to get in a line, because if you didn't get the class you needed, you didn't graduate. But I'm kind of walking around looking lost. I'm not sure what I want to do. And this long arm reaches out, and this gentleman says, young man, you look like you're lost. And I said, I am. I'm trying to find a major. He says, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, let me tell you, I want a job that's got a lot of pay. It's low stress, not many hours, free time up the wazoo. And the guy says, I've got the thing for you. Well, it wasn't law enforcement. It was Dr. John Hanks, and it was a social work department. And the only profession that made less money than being a cop. Okay, so anyway, I went into the social work department, and I graduated. And Dr. Hanks would have me come and speak at his classes after I got hired at the police department. He referred to me as his rogue student gone wrong. And anyway, I came out of the social work program with the attitude that there were two major problems in our country. That was Republicans and police officers. And then I got hired on the police department. In 3 days, I found out that was all wrong. The problem with our country were Democrats and social workers. Took the tragic and brutal murder of a young man that I had never met to make me realize that all of my belief structures, the way I acted, the things that I said, were based on what other people told me, other people said, and not on an informed basis of knowledge. On October the 6th of 1998, Matthew Shepard was a 21-year-old student at the University of Wyoming. He was a loving son and a brother and a friend, and I happen to know that to be fact because I know those parents, and I know that brother, and a lot of those friends flipped my life around. On October the 6th, 1998, I was a commander of the detective division of the Laramie Police Department. I was fully homophobic, mean-spirited, faggot rolled off my tongue as easily as I love you did to my children. I was the first one to walk in a locker room and go, hey, man, did you hear the one about the 3 queers that walked in a bar? Never knowing or caring if the young man standing behind me might be struggling with sexual identity issues, sexual orientation issues, those types of things. On October the 7th of 1998, Matt lays in a hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado, claimed to life. And I'm beginning a journey to lose my ignorance. I feel hypocritical to even discuss it with y'all because I did a 180. I can't explain it. It happened fast, but we were in a situation where I was forced to interact with the gay community that we knew existed in Laramie, but you never saw them because they were all closeted up. I learned real quickly that the only difference between Jim Osborne and I was sexual orientation. You know, this guy hunts ducks. Gay guys don't hunt ducks. That was my thought. You know, I've learned in this business after 40 years, if it's funny, you can laugh. If it's sad, you can cry. And if you don't, you blow up. I remember when I was a little kid, 3rd grade, we lived in a little town called Platteville, Colorado. It's like big now. It was 99 people when I lived in Platteville, Colorado. And I was in the 3rd grade class, and there was a little girl that sat behind me in our row who would wet her pants in class. Now, in this one case, this 3rd grade teacher made this little girl take off her shoes, stand in a puddle of urine on her chair for her desk in front of the whole class. And I remember today, like it was yesterday, turning around and looking at this little girl. She was wearing a turquoise, like square dance dress that went out like this. She had on white socks that were scalloped around the edges, and they were folded over, and there was a pink border. And she was standing there with her eyes closed and her mouth wide open, and the tears were dripping off of her chin. And I'm 66 years old. If that girl is lucky enough to be alive today, do you think she remembers that? I remembered it, and I never knew why. It hugely disturbed me. And then I came to the conclusion that I've probably made somebody feel like that because of my attitudes, because of the things I said, the ways that I treated them. I want to talk a moment, just very quickly, about parental fear. I lived my athletic life through my son Ryan. Love you, Ryan. He was all everything, junior high and high school. You had to take him to swim team. You had to take him to track practice. You had to get him to football. You had to get him to basketball. He still holds the Laramie high jump record. I think he set it in 97. So I'm living it through him. But I can't wait till he gets his dang driver's license because we're tired of driving everywhere. So finally gets the driver's license, and then the cop and the parent in me kicks in. And he's 6'5", big kid. But every time I'd hear a siren when Ryan wasn't home, I didn't breathe right until he came through the door. And I could get on a ladder and give him a hug or kiss or tell him that I loved him. And then I think, Matt Shepard is never walking through that door again. Judy and Dennis Shepard will never be able to hold him and give him a kiss and tell him how much they love him. In my opinion, only because of who he was. I want to talk a little bit about the motivational factors behind the Matt Shepard murder. There's a lot of things out there. There are so many people that wanted to come up with a theory and throw it against the wall and see if it would stick. Because so many people didn't want to believe that what happened to Matt was based on hatred because of his sexual orientation. I believe that it was. I worked with a team of phenomenal investigators in this case. We've got to recognize two of them are no longer with us. We lost Commander Jeff Berry on July the 24th, 2016. He was a detective sergeant at the time of the murder. I lost our undersheriff, Rob Debris, on September the 2nd of 2016. 2 months later, he was my undersheriff and my very best friend. He was a sergeant at the sheriff's office at the time. They call me sometimes in some of these press things the lead investigator. Those two were the lead investigators. I was the highest ranking guy in the room. I typed better than them, so I was the one typing affidavits for search warrants and things like that. But it was a team, and it was a complete and total team from the time this all started until a year later when Aaron McKinney sentenced to 2 life sentences without possibility of parole. One of the motivational things that came out was that it was a robbery gone wrong. Our investigative team never discounted that the initial motivation for this contact was robbery. And if Matt would have had more than $20 in his wallet, they killed this kid over $20 in a pair of shoes, that they would have used that money to buy dope. We know that. That's where it was going. McKinney's own statement is that I only had to hit him one time to get his wallet. McKinney and Henderson go into the bathroom at the Fireside Lounge. They know Matt is gay. They hatch a plan to act like they were gay, to try to gain his confidence, get him isolated, and removed from safety, a place where other people were. He asked for a ride home. He's in the middle of a small-sized pickup between Henderson driving and McKinney passenger. McKinney's not driving because his license is suspended. Okay. They drive away. They go down Grand Avenue. They get near the old Walmart where the Snowy Range Academy is right now. And McKinney goes, guess what? We're not fags and you've just been jacked. Hits him with a gun. The wallet comes out. The robbery motivation stops when the wallet's in McKinney's hand. So what goes profoundly awry at that point for them to drive him to a location east of Imperial Heights, and before you get to Sherman Hills, tie him to a buck fence and hit him between 19 and 21 times. 19 and 21 times, only in the head and the face. I've never saw Matt in the hospital in Fort Collins, but I did put together all of the court exhibits for the trial that were his injuries and his postmortem examination or autopsy. The only time I have seen that type of trauma to an individual were in high-speed crashes. Compression fractures, where you could take calipers and measure the butt of that gun and measure the compression fracture in the skull and go, hey, same size. Now, we're not talking about a little gun. We're talking about a 350 Smith & Wesson 357 Magnum with an 8-inch barrel. It's about that long, held by the handle with a butt on it. Our patrol division, this is something a lot of people don't know. This is the rest of the story. Shortly after leaving Matthew tied and left for dead at a fence east of Imperial Heights, they drive into town. They park near an intersection of 7th and Harney. They end up getting in an issue with 2 Hispanic kids who are also in the area. Henderson starts following them down the street and starts calling them bitches. The one kid turns around and, who are you calling bitches? And about that time, McKinney comes out of nowhere with the same gun he's just used on Matthew and hits this one kid in the head, causing a depression fracture. He's lucky he lived through it. And then a Laramie PD officer, Flint Waters, comes into the scene, sees something going on. There's a couple of guys on each side of a truck. He hollers at them, police officers, here I come, type of thing, and they split off 2 different directions. He chases one of them, over fences, through yards, up and down, finally catches him, and it's Russell Henderson. And Russell Henderson has a slight cut on his lip. And according to the police report, he had a slight odor of alcohol, did not appear to be intoxicated, and didn't seem to be under the influence of any other drugs. Okay. McKinney got away that night. Sergeant Cushman at the time, Mitch, commander, retired, is in the audience, and his midnight shift, find the truck. They look in the back of the truck. There's a coat covered in blood, this big 357 Magnum covered in blood, a pair of nice black shoes inside. Didn't match McKinney and Henderson's style. Really nice black shoes. Bedford Stew, I believe is what they were. And on the dash is the Hilltop National Bank debit card from Casper, Wyoming, in the name of Matthew Shepard. We don't know who Matthew Shepard is at this point. We thought they were probably out burglarizing cars, prowling cars, getting in, stealing change, whatever they might be able to get. But we don't know. And I come to work the next morning, and the midnight shift guys show me the gun they've protected as evidence, and it is completely covered in blood. Barrel, cylinder, trigger, grip. And there's blonde hairs embedded in the wood grip of this gun, and they're sticking out. Well, we looked at it. I've been through a blood spatter interpretation course at CSU. It was 60 hours of playing in blood. Don't want to do it again, but it was good training at the time. And I know that if I come up and I tag you with this gun on the head, that even though head wounds bleed, they really bleed good. If I just hit you one time and stop, there might not be any blood transference on that gun at all. Where you get that transference is when the blood starts to run and pool, and you hit it again and again and again. So here's a whole room full of cops going, something else has happened. We know it. We just don't know what it is. Because that couldn't have happened with the information we had on that one assault. 16 hours later, young man riding down a trail behind Imperial Heights, his flat tire kind of crashes his bike, and he looks up and he sees something, and he thinks it's a child. Initially, he thought it was a scarecrow. Why the media picked up on that, and then all of a sudden, it was scarecrow stuff. But it was pushing on to Halloween. He thought somebody had put something on the fence. And then he could hear the breathing. And he was going, wow, it's a person. And he thought, a child. Matt was 5'2", weighed 105 pounds. My son was bigger than him in 5th grade. Very diminutive, really, really small. I submit McKinney didn't have to hit him at all to get his wallet. Give me the wallet. Yeah, take it. Take my shoes, take my pants, whatever. Just get me out of this situation. But to take him and drive, tie him up, the autopsy photographs, being a law enforcement as long as we have, and some of you that have been, you know those patterned bruise injuries that you see in domestic violence cases or child abuse cases where they're handprints, but they're bruises. Matt had those on both arms and both wrists. He didn't go to that fence willingly. Robbery gone wrong? No, not in my opinion. There are people that were involved in the investigation that feel like that was the true motivation. And we never discounted that was the initial motivation. And the belief, whatever you believe, is fine. Bottom line, terrible, horrific, brutal murder. And we can't call it a hate crime because we don't have hate crimes in Wyoming, right? You couldn't be charged with that. We're one of 5 states that have no protection based on sexual orientation or gender identity. I know that's a political juggle thing, but we're the equality state. The next thing that came up as a motivation was gay panic. It was gay panic. Depending on what interviews you read in this investigation, it was alleged that Matthew put his hand on McKinney's leg. And then another interview, he didn't touch him on the leg. He looked like he was going to reach for him. So they tried to do this gay panic defense initially, and the judge got rid of it, which was a good thing. But still, the jury of 12 people got to hear it. Even though a judge says you'll disregard anything that these folks have said, does it still stick there, maybe, in one mind? It only takes one mind for an acquittal. Paul Howard, who was the district attorney in Fulton County, Atlanta, Georgia, invited me to come out and speak. And there was about 200 basically investigators and prosecutors. And the reason he asked me to come out is he had had an attorney in his office whose name was Ahmad Dabaran. And Ahmad Dabaran had two wishes in his life. One, to become a United States citizen. He was from Somalia. Two, to become an attorney. He accomplished both. Their DA's office is bigger than the state of Wyoming's law enforcement. They got more attorneys than we got cops in our whole state. Every one of those attorneys knew Ahmad. And I'd meet with them and we'd sit down and we'd talk, and they'd said, Ahmad was the kind of a man where you could be in your office having the worst day of your life, and he'd come in, and when he'd leave, he'd be smiling. According to the gay panic defense, Ahmad made a romantic gesture to a guy who panicked and hit him more than 100 times with a baseball bat. Killed him. The defense was that he freaked out so bad he just lost his mind. It worked. He was acquitted. He walked. Talking with Paul Howard and the other attorneys that were the closest to this case, this occurred in Cobb County, which is an adjoining county to Fulton County. My understanding was law enforcement didn't buy it. Prosecutors didn't believe their case. I was sitting on a bed when I got there, and I had the television muted because I was talking to Jen on the phone, and I see all of this activity on the television. So I said, Jen, I'll call you back. I turned up the phone, or turned up the television. It was a gymnasium full of the parents of the students of the high school in Cobb County, Georgia, protesting the formulation of a gay and straight alliance in their high school. There are places in our country where not only law enforcement, prosecutors, and people have the opinion that if you get beat up and you happen to be gay, you probably had it coming. Still a long way to go. Gay panic. When did he panic? When they went in the bathroom and decided to act like they were gay to get him isolated? When did he panic then? Did he panic when he was in the middle and helpless on their way to the fence? When was the panic? You know, if I'm afraid of you and I panic, I'm going to bite you in the face. I'm going to kick you in the stomach. I'm going to do whatever I can do. That's a panic. But you tie somebody to a fence, hit them 19 to 21 times. Concentrated effort, only blows in the head and the face. That's not panic. That's torture. That's huge torture. It was really kind of eye-opening for me when I was out in Atlanta, Georgia, and then the following year, Kamala Harris, who at that time was the district attorney in San Francisco, asked me to come out and speak, and there was about 350 cops there. And when I did my first talk anywhere, it was in California, and I thought, holy mackerel, California, the land of the enlightened. They're just going to embrace me because yeah. Well, I walked into this room, and there's like 80 people in it, and you could tell the ones that wanted to be there, because there was like 15 of them over here, and the other 65 who were peed off because their lieutenant or their sergeant said, you're going to this training? And it was hostile. For me, it was a hostile work environment. You know, in California, the land of the enlightened. And the next time I went, when Kamala Harris invited us out, like you said, there's probably 350 prosecutors and law enforcement investigators there. And I could see the movement towards the realization that hate crimes exist, that not all crimes are hate crimes, because I used to believe that. I bought into all of that. But there is a difference, and a substantial difference. And we started seeing the formulation of specialized units and larger agencies. We're not big enough to do that because we just aren't. We don't have enough folks. So we're generalists, but specialize in hate crimes and those investigations and the dynamics that go around them, and particularly crimes against people because of their sexual orientation or identity is so underreported. It's hugely underreported. I wish we had a phone number people could call and be anonymous and say, hey, somebody called me this or somebody said that. Because that's where hate crimes start, is hate speech. You know, I never thought about it growing up. My dad never called anyone gay. So you can imagine. He never called anybody African American or black. So you can imagine. And it's hate speech. Excuse me. Sometimes my brain gets going faster than my mouth and I get lost. So kind of my tongue gets all tangled up. Specialized units in law enforcement. And it was back, I think it was 2008. Judy and I and Greg Moralja, who is a member of the Matthew Shepard Foundation, used to be the director of law enforcement training at Napa Valley College. Didn't know he was gay. He actually came out in my living room here in Laramie, Wyoming, and Jen and I were just floored, had no idea he was gay. And then it was so exciting to us. He says, I think you're happier than I am, you know, that he was able to do that. But we're in Washington, and Judy and I were co-addressing a group. I think it was like the 11th annual International Association of Gay and Lesbian Law Enforcement Professionals. There is a room 3 times the size full of people, all over the United States in like 7 or 8 different countries. And Greg and I were going to address them at 8:30 in the morning. And I went, well, we'll probably have like 40 of those folks show up because I know cops didn't come in here at 8:30 in the morning because they didn't get to bed till 3:30 this morning, you know, and it's like, they're not gonna be here. And every seat was full. And we walked in and Greg goes, how many of these guys do you think, gals, do you think are out in their organizations, in their law enforcement organizations? And I went, probably about 30%. He says, I'll bet you $1 it's less. So if you don't ask the question, you don't get the answer. And we asked the question, 100% of the people in that room were out in their departments. 100%. So what it says to me is that law enforcement administrators are starting to see the light. When I started in this business back in 1974, they were looking for law enforcement officers that could breathe, were big and strong. I never fit that mold, but big and strong. And somewhere along the line, we started thinking that maybe smaller, smarter, and faster is a better fit for law enforcement than that. And we're seeing a change. We're seeing an evolution towards working hate crimes. And it's hard, some people have a difficulty looking at this as a hate crime. You know, I ate lunch 2 or 3 times with the sisters of James Byrd Jr. Phenomenal ladies. Have never been on an airplane in their lives. They get flown to the White House. And we meet for lunch. It wasn't difficult for people to understand the brutality of 3 white guys in a pickup chaining a black man to the back of it, and dragging him through the dirt roads around Jasper, Texas, cutting him in half on a culvert as a hate crime. Because that's our life history. People have been victimizing African Americans for as long as I can remember in my life, and still today. People had an issue because it's not written up there. It's race, religion, national origin, color. It didn't say sexual orientation, gender identity, and disability. That wasn't in there. Now it's in there on a national level, and it should be. The third thing, and probably the most recent, is that McKinney and Henderson were in the midst of an overpowering methamphetamine binge that fueled their actions against Matthew. Well, we're dealing with meth every day. My first 30 years in law enforcement, I saw heroin twice. We've had like 11 overdose heroin deaths in this city in the last 2 years. We had one last week, almost 2. And the methamphetamine is a scourge of the West. They now have one pot production. It used to be you could normally locate your meth lab as soon as it blew up and the walls came in. Now they're doing it in one pot, and it's cheap. And there's a lot of it out there. And does it fuel anger? Does it fuel unpredictable behavior? Yes. We have to admit that. But we still have to look at the tangible evidence that we were able to determine and corroborate through the investigation. The first person that started talking was Kristen Price. Kristen Price was Aaron McKinney's girlfriend. She was the mother of a 1-year-old, beautiful kid. She probably had the most to lose because you got a baby and you're going to prison for accessory after the fact to murder. So she started talking first. She said Aaron came home, came through the window, was bleeding from the ear. He says, I think I just killed a fag. And she says he goes over to a Walmart bag in the garbage can that had a poopy baby diaper in it and puts a black wallet in the diaper, folds it up, puts it in the Walmart bag. She says, me and Chastity and Russell drive to Cheyenne to get rid of Russell's clothing because it's covered in blood. And they dumped the clothing in a dumpster behind a gas station. We never were able to recover it. It got dumped before we were able to get over there. But he didn't want to lose his tennis shoes because they were brand new. So we bring his tennis shoes back to Laramie and hide them in a shed next to a relative's trailer. They came home that night after work. They were both roofers. They had no money. They were going through ashtrays, drawers, things. They were finding what they could find money-wise. They went out. They went out that night. They went to the library. We were able to determine through investigative process that the bartender said McKinney and Henderson came in. They bought one pitcher of beer. They paid for it with nickels, dimes, and quarters, change. Started to shoot pool. They drank about half of that pitcher of beer and they left. That's corroborating what Kristen says about not having any money. They go to the Fireside Lounge. The bartender there recalled them coming in, buying one pitcher of beer, paying for it with nickels, dimes, and quarters, and then eventually making contact with Matthew and having a discussion at a table. So that would corroborate the officer that arrested Henderson later that night's information. I smelled a slight odor of alcohol, did not appear to be intoxicated, not under the influence of any drugs. And that particular officer had been a DCI drug task force officer, and they're trained in symptomatology of drug use. Did not appear to be under the influence of any other drugs. Kristen further says they haven't had any meth for at least 7 days because they didn't have any money. So all of these things that we're corroborating, the evidence is tangible. You're able to grab your hands on it. There was nothing that would indicate that they were under the influence at the time they had contact with Matt Shepard. And then there's a book. Now I'm going to talk about the book because if you wish to go in a few days and listen about the book, go for it. It's called The Book of Matt. It was written by an author named Stephen Menez. It's mistitled. It should have been The Book of Lies because it is fraught with misinformation, disinformation, and outright lies. Part of that book alleges that Matthew was a underworld kingpin meth dealer. Well, we deal with meth dealers every day. And here you've got a kid that's 5'2", weighs 105 pounds. He's got blonde hair, blue eyes, braces, nicely dressed, well-mannered, good tipper. doesn't fit the mold. That mold shows up on the doorstep of a meth dealer and laughing into the alley. The things that were not understandable to me on how this information was vetted is that there are a myriad of unidentified sources, anonymous sources, folks that were afraid to use their names because law enforcement in Laramie is so corrupt that we would whack them. Okay, you guys that know me know that I've made forged my reputation on treating people with dignity and respect, even when they don't deserve it. And my guys at the sheriff's office and the guys at the police department are made in that same, you would rather educate than enforce any day. You enforce, that's a lot of work. You educate, and maybe you've avoided that work down the line too. So anyway, do they not think that the investigative process looked at those angles? We deal with meth dealers all the time, and they know that they've got stuff in their car, and they know that they've got stuff in their house, and they drive down the street and they speed and we stop them, and there's 3 or 4 different meth pipes in there. There should be some syringes. There's bags with residue. You get in their houses and it's laying around. You know, they call you because somebody stole something and you're standing in their kitchen and there's crap everywhere. Huh. We searched Matthew's apartment with a fine-tooth comb. There were no indicators whatsoever of use or distribution of methamphetamines or other drugs. You know, we were in there. We don't make this stuff up. I only had to read one sentence in this book to understand from where it comes. And the one sentence has to do with the main character who is named that none of Matt's friends knew, none of Matt's family knew. This person that had this intense relationship and provided all this information also said that Dennis and Judy Shepard gave me a vial of Matt's ashes to wear on a necklace around my neck. That's a lie. That kind of stuff to me, the integrity of a law enforcement officer has got to be at a level that sets a standard. You can't get on a stand and stretch the truth. You can't get on the stand and confabulate. You can't get on the stand and lie, because if you do and you get caught, you are no longer in the business. You are no longer a law enforcement officer, because that gets out, and every time you're on the stand after that. Isn't it true, Officer O'Malley, that you lied in a drug case involving so-and-so and such and such? If I took a criminal investigation to any prosecutor in this country that was at the same level of the information that's relied on to make you believe was in this book, they would laugh me out of the office. You are out of here. I want to, a couple of times, oh man, I'm running short on time. I'm sorry, guys. I got to keep moving. I want to read a couple of things that came from Dennis Shepard's address to the court after the conviction of Aaron McKinney. And Dennis, where are you? You are in the back row. I love you. Just so you get a kind of an idea, this is from November the 4th of 1999. It was over a year from the time that Matthew died on October the 12th till the time that the conviction, November the 4th. My son Matthew did not look like a winner. After all, he was small for his age, weighing at the most 110 pounds and standing only 5'2". He was rather uncoordinated and wore braces from the age of 13 till the day he died. However, in his all too brief life, he proved that he was a winner. My son, a gentle, caring soul, proved that he was a tough as, if not tougher than anyone I ever heard of or known. On October the 6th, 1998, my son tried to show the world that he could win again. On October 12, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero lost. On October 12th, my firstborn son and my hero died 50 days before his 22nd birthday. He died quietly, surrounded by family and friends, with his mother and brother holding his hand. All that I have left now are the memories. During the trial, Dennis and Judy and I and Rob Debris and Jeff Berry and Ben Fritzen and some other folks were sitting in Mulligan's. It's a local pub. We were having a drink. I mean, the intensity of a murder trial is high anyway, but this was a death penalty case, and death penalty cases are different. That was my first one. Hopefully I never have to experience that kind of a profound feeling again. But we were sitting around talking, and Judy goes, I've got this little window of opportunity. This little window of opportunity, and I'm hoping to be able to reach as many people as I can about issues of tolerance and diversity and compassion and inclusion and acceptance. I've got this little window of opportunity. That window of opportunity is now 20 years open. 20 years open. And Judy was on her own for a while because Dennis was still working. He was still in Saudi Arabia. And then he hits the States and brings another definition to the word incorrigible. I'm kidding. And it's been a steady and constant ride since that time. I truly think that part of Matthew's legacy is the Laramie Project. I truly believe that. As a chief of police and as a sheriff, I've probably sent out 50 to 75 shoulder patches to high schools, colleges, and universities around our country that put on productions of the Laramie Project. That time I was out in Washington, I was telling you about earlier, I was looking through the newspaper, and in there are there sections on things to do. They're still showing Death of a Salesman, Hat Full of Rain, stage plays that have been around for 60 and some odd years. I truly believe that the Laramie Project will stay in that kind of a category. It will be shown over and over and over again. Paul, I've got to quit at 10, correct? Okay. No, we're all right. I'm not going to go into the 2020 debacle because I really don't have the time. I want to do some other things very quickly. I'd like to read you something that may clear up some of your thoughts about the motivation. This is a letter that Aaron McKinney wrote to Russell Henderson when he was incarcerated in our Albany County Jail. It was intercepted. I will bleep a couple of the words because I used those words before, and Dennis says you shouldn't say those things. And I took that to heart. Even though I wasn't saying them, Dennis, I was just quoting what somebody else said. Russ, hey homeboy, what's popping over there? When we go to court, if they try us together or separate, I want you to blame everything on me. I already told them that, but they should hear you say what I said. So this is what I told them. Me and you was getting effed up at the bar, and when we was fixing to leave, Matt Shepard asked us for a ride home. So we gave him a ride to where he said he lived. And when we got out there, he tried to get on me. And I started kicking his ass. You asked me to quit, but since I was drunk and pointing a cannon at you, you did what I said because you were scared. I made you at gunpoint drive me to the fence. Then I tied him up. After that, he mouthed off, so I hit him a few more times, and his fag ass died. After that, I pointed my gun at you and threatened your life if you told the police anything. In no time did we know he was gay until he tried to get on me. I didn't kidnap him or intend to rob him. I just took his shit when I was kicking his ass. The reason Matt told us he lived in Imperial Heights is because he wanted to get me in a dark place so we could get funky. That's all I got for now. I'm sure I'll think of more later. Russ, I don't think you could begin to understand how sorry I am that I got you and Chas into this mess. You're the best friend I've ever had and the only one who never returned on me or ratted me out. That means a lot to me. If you hate me for this, I understand, but if there's anything I can say or do, let me know. I'll do anything for you, bro. No matter what it is, I'll write more later, poems, and you can write back or yell at me by the door. Later, homie, Aaron. After that, he mouthed off, so I hit him a few more times, and his fag ass died. You know, you can be a cop in Chicago or Detroit or LA or New York and work in a homicide unit in 20 years and never know one of your victims, never know one of your perpetrators. Aaron McKinney was my next door neighbor for several years when he was growing up. It wasn't on the bad side of town. It was in Imperial Heights. Imperial Heights, middle to upper middle class area. Graduated from high school with Steve Shepard, Matt's uncle. We weren't close friends, but we were acquaintances. Dennis was 2 years ahead of me, Cheyenneese. Didn't know him at all. So it becomes really personal. You know, it's been said that the difference between a ham and egg breakfast is that the chicken was involved, the pig was committed. You know, I've been committed to trying to give as much information as I possibly can to people so they can make a determination and formulate their own opinions. Because I wasn't smart enough to do that for the first 45 years of my life. It's been a change for me. I know I embarrassed my children because of the way I talked. They grew up really well in spite of their old man. They were in an environment where there were kids that they knew that were gay and were friends and knew the things that I should have known. It was a flip, like a switch. I want to read one more portion of Dennis's address to the court. And I apologize, I'm leaving out a lot of the investigation because I didn't have time. Forensically, the most compelling investigation I've ever seen in my life. The amount of evidence that we recovered as a team was phenomenal. Court TV, it makes you puff up. Court TV comes into Laramie and they sit in and they said, your exhibits in this case are second to none we've seen anywhere in the country. And you go, you keep your head up a little bit high. And regardless of all of the media attention this case got, we wouldn't have investigated any differently than what we did. I'm really proud of that group. I really miss the two guys that are gone. By the end of the beating, his body was just trying to survive. He left him out there by himself, but he wasn't alone. There were his lifelong friends with him, friends that he had grown up with. You're probably wondering who those friends were. First, he had the beautiful night sky with the same stars and moon that he used to look at through a telescope. Then he had the daylight and the sun to shine on him one more time. One more cool, wonderful autumn day in Wyoming. His last day alive in Wyoming. His last day alive in the state that he always proudly called home. And through it all, he was breathing in for the last time the smell of the Wyoming sagebrush and the scent of pine trees from the snowy range. He heard the wind, the ever-present Wyoming wind for the last time. He had one more friend with him, one he grew to know through his time in Sunday school as an acolyte at St. Mark's in Casper, as well as through his visits to St. Matthew's in Laramie. He had God. I feel better knowing he was more. I want to thank you all for taking the time to come out on a Saturday morning. I apologize for not being able to get as far as I wanted to get with you all, but I think you know where my heart is, where my head is, and I got an open door policy. If you need anything, you need help, or you need anybody to just talk to, feel free to give me a call. God bless you all.
We have time for about 5 minutes worth of questions, so if you would
cool.
direct your questions to Sheriff O'Malley, please.
We'll get you. So many people are kind of making fun or finger pointing at our millennials, but that's a group of people that's going to save this nation. And if they mobilize the way that I see it, they have the ability to direct the course of the nation. And it's the young people, and I don't care what party they belong to, they're becoming informed and communicating. And I was asked a question the other day when we met with students. They said, well, what do you agree with, what do you think is millennials' biggest issue? And I think it's all our biggest issue is it's the total divisiveness and the apparent inability for our national leaders to work across party lines. It's just, man, we got to change that back up. Thank you very much. Actually, I was born in Cheyenne, but when my dad was with the railroad, and we lived in 6 states in 7 years, and we lived in Platteville, Colorado, and at that time, Platteville had like 99 people. Had one doctor, he came to your house. It was cool.
Overall, I would ask for the older generation, like my stepfather's story as well. At what point in time do you see, or do you think you have to go through something like you went through so extreme to be able to make such a change in your opinion about a group of people? Because I think that, when I think about some things that I wasn't able to ask my grandmother who's passed away, who's white, and I think like how would she feel about having a queer granddaughter? Because at the time I was very little, and I wonder like how would she feel about me? And I don't have to worry about that because she's not here, but I wonder like at what point in time do you think that's going to end when we don't blame how we grew up for the way we don't blame where we came from for our intolerance?
Yeah. The short answer is I hope they don't have to experience what I experienced to change. I mean, that's profound. So I was pretty bullheaded. I think that having my kids and seeing them and the way they were also helped because, they're all smarter than their own man. I just hope that I think this will be an issue that can get better, but I don't think it'll ever go away. When we had the Westboro Baptist Church here, we built fences for them to protect them. And I looked out at Calvary Rivka's window, and that's got instantly enraged because we built the fences to protect them. And I believe in the First Amendment. I believe they have a right to be there. I believe they have a right to speak. But they have 9 and 10-year-old kids on the outer perimeter. What cowardice is that? The first thing, holding signs that AIDS cures fags, Matt burns in hell, goes downhill from there. And then I got to thinking, what opportunity does any one of those children holding those signs have to have a friend that's gay black, Jewish, any way different than they are. You know, hatred is learned. You're not born with it. There's always going to be prejudice there. The scariest prejudice to me wasn't the skinheads on the street corners. It's the people in places of power that are closeted bigots that direct things silently so their names and their faces don't become associated with it. When we were lobbying in when we were lobbying in Washington for hate crimes, there were people there that direct our nation who had the opinion that all gay men are pedophiles. One among them out there, Dennis Hastert, the Speaker of the House, is prosecuted for being a pedophile. When he's sentenced, the judge referred to him as a serial child molester. But they're making decisions on what other people's rights should be. It just pisses me off. I'm sorry. It does.
One last quick question.
So, as I'm sure you've probably heard, especially amongst the transgender community specifically, but the LGBT community in general, there's sort of a fear of law enforcement and that bigotry. What do you formally do, Sheriff, to ensure that that's not a fear that our local LGBT community needs to have in your office?
Good question. You have to lead from the top. My guys know my attitudes and my belief structures, and they may differ, but they don't differ with it to my face, and they don't differ with dealing with people. I'm blessed in having a staff that's phenomenal. They're better mediators than any group I've ever worked with. When your backup could be an hour away, you can learn how to communicate, how to educate, how to enforce another day and walk away. Kamala Harris's conference really added that transgender component to it, because the people being victimized in the Castro in San Francisco was going way, 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 way up. And the fear factor of being who you are, being able to go to a club, enjoy yourself, and walk home without getting attacked by people that make their business of doing that is real. And I think we're making an impact at some level, but prejudice and bias are never going to go away. There's going to always be that stronghold somewhere in our country. So, thank you again, guys.